And I would like you to join me in welcoming to the stage my friend and our CEO, Barry Crist.
It's a nice suit, Nathan. Look, a couple things I want to talk about, but first, why Chef exists. And the first reason is actually you. Those of you, or those of us that have been or are IT operators. And if you go back to why Adam actually wrote Chef, it was to bring a little bit of joy to the IT operator's life. And this was from a couple points of view. The first was there was all these rote tasks that you could just automate and sort of remove from your daily task list. But really the other, and more fundamentally, was to be able to give that IT operator reach that was previously unimaginable. And you've heard here at ChefConf previous speakers talk about using Chef to create and run the world's largest online game, to bring blockbusting drugs to market, even to run the world's most on-time airline. And we're going to be talking about a lot of things over the next couple days, and one of them is Habitat. And we want to make that same promise on Habitat, that joy that many of you felt the first time you used Chef. We're bringing that to the world of modern application architectures with Habitat. And so I'm going to ask all of you to spend some time and check out Habitat. The second reason on why Chef exists is super relevant in today's world and today's market. And that's that we want to help every single organization in every industry to be able to be a kick-ass, high-velocity, competitive, emphasis on competitive software-driven organization. And being great at software and being able to deliver delight to your customers through software, this is a requisite for success for modern business. And we've been talking about this for a few years, that every company is in fact a software company. And yet, most companies today are still struggling with software. And if you struggle with software, you're going to struggle with customers. And increasingly, we're seeing that struggle going all the way down to financial results. And back in 2013, when we talked about every company is a software company, I also talked about we're sort of going to witness the collapse of traditional IT, and to some that seemed a little far-fetched. And I remember talking specifically about the auto industry as an industry that I think amazing change was going to happen to over the coming years. And you see this, in fact, happening. I also talked about who the future leaders would be and that they'd be coming from IT. And I don't know if you saw the news on Ford. Their new CEO actually ran their autonomous vehicle in their digital division. Is now running all of Ford. And we work with 3 of the largest auto companies in the world, and I can tell you they're deeply, deeply investing into the world of software, and they want to make their product amazing software platforms, and they are doing it. And everything we do in today's world seems to be governed by digital experiences. It's not just the big auto companies, all the way down to my local barber in Capitol Hill, Seattle. He now has an app that I can book my barber appointment. I don't have to go wait and worry that it's going to be crowded and I'll spend 40 minutes. So it's, and everything in between. And McKinsey, who does a lot of research on what's going on in the digital world, they sort of divide the world into 2 groups. And the first they call digital attackers. And these are the companies that increasingly are dominating the digital world. Now familiar names like Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Google. The New York Times calls this group, by the way, the Frightful Five. It's their word, not mine. And stunningly, this group has nearly $3 trillion in market capitalization. And if you take them plus all the others that are lumped in that digital attackers group, that now represents almost 17% of the US economy. And the second group is the incumbents. And I don't want to diminish the importance of this group. In fact, this is the bulk of our economy. These are companies that were built and created really before the revolution of the web and mobile over the last 10 years. And remember, the iPhone's only 10 years old, and really powerful, ubiquitous, high bandwidth mobile, it's only come to us in maybe the last 3 or 4 years. I think in this digital transformation journey, we're much closer to the beginning than we are the end. And the reality is this group of incumbents, they're under enormous pressure right now. And there's this growing gap between those digital attackers and those incumbents. And I think this gap's going to get bigger before it gets smaller. And back to McKinsey's research, they talk about the impact that the digital attackers are making on the incumbents. Revenue's down 45%, profit down 35%. It's enormous, enormous impact. And I think this is certainly most visible in retail right now. And retail's facing this perfect storm of Amazon, overbuilt capacity, big changes in consumer behavior. And we're seeing this turn into abandoned malls and just a tough, tough place to be right now is retail. But it's not just retail that this drama is playing out. It's media, financial services, education, healthcare. Even nonprofits are facing disruption. And I think in the future, web and mobile will just be table stakes. We haven't even really got going. You think about machine learning, AI, blockchain, AR, VR. There's not a single industry on the planet that's going to be spared the turmoil of digital disruption. And yet, there's reason for real optimism. Incumbents can and are becoming digital attackers. I'm to borrow from the news. Take Walmart last week. In the middle of retail Armageddon, they beat earnings. They posted a 63% increase in their digital business, and their stock's now at a 2-year high. Not to mention a whole bunch of you which are doing this every single day. GE, Alaska Airlines, Starbucks, to make a couple plugs for some hometown companies, and a whole bunch of you, others. You're turning the digital attack mode dial to full strength. And IHG, I love this quote from Eric at IHG. He's got it totally right. The next decade is going to be about the fast beating the slow. And that's what our job collectively is, to be fast. And Capital One, what about Capital One? Talk about a business that is fully invested in the digital world. Not only are they big Chef users, and a round of applause, one of our ChefConf sponsors, thank you. They have their own open source project, Hydrograph. They're doing crazy things for a financial services company around APIs to create ecosystem around what they consider their platform. They have a super cool public-facing developer exchange. And actually, as I was getting ready Sunday night for my talk and checking out their developer site, I was playing their Spotify developer playlist that they have posted. Talk about bringing a little bit of joy. And we've actually got some video from our own Nathan Harvey visiting Capital One. So I'd love to roll the video, please.
Hey, Nathan, you found me.
Yeah. How are you?
Good. It's so good to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Capital One and Capital One and Chef. So Chef is a technology company, technology first. Capital One is a bank. So how do these two intersect? Where do they collide?
Well, I'll tell you, Capital One's been on a journey over the last several years in really transforming ourselves as a technology company that's delivering great digital capabilities and solutions to our customers. So we really think that technology is going to be at the forefront of everything that we create on behalf of them. It's a powerful charter, right? And I think that everything that we're doing is really geared towards that end. Let's go meet Brock. He's awesome, and he can share a little bit more about what's going on.
Awesome.
Let's
do
go.
it.
Our continuous integration delivery. Hey, Brock. This is Nathan.
Hey, Brock.
Have a seat.
Thanks.
it starts with the developer and the collaboration environment, right? Setting the stage for how our engineers work together and ultimately refine these ideas. And then it gets more into the automation technology, right? So once you're ready to proceed with this idea, we ultimately deploy a lot of automation frameworks and tools to efficiently make it from idea to the actual deployed solution. We want those type of free thinkers. We want those doers. We want those innovators. We don't want to put anybody in a box. In fact, it's quite the opposite, right? We want you to bring your whole self to work and use your creativity, use your ideas, use your ambition to collaborate in any number of different ways back to the organization and ultimately to that of our customer. I think it'd be a really good idea for you to meet some of the folks on the team. A guy named Dave Tashner is a really talented chef engineer, and he's just right across campus. Want to hop on the bike and take a ride?
That sounds great, Brian.
Great.
Yeah, all right.
You to Nathan from Chef. Guys, this is Nathan.
Nathan, it's nice to meet you.
What's up, man?
I'm Lawrence. How's
Hey,
it going?
Lawrence. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you too.
My first exposure to Chef really was with you up there teaching this 2-day class, and we actually took that class and rolled it out at Capital One. It's part of a DevOps transformation journey that Capital One has been on and continues to go down that really shows a paradigm shift in the way that developers look at their day-to-day jobs and the way that systems integrators and operations people view their jobs. In that now they're codifying everything and they're testing their servers and they're bringing servers up dynamically. And having something like Chef where we can all speak a common language across Windows and Linux environments makes it really easy to feel like you can contribute to anybody else's project because you all speak sort of the same language. And that's really necessary, I think, as we continue down this journey to make sure that our employees feel empowered to help each other. And by automating a lot of these things, we remove a lot of roadblocks and we can move a lot faster than we did before, which is fantastic for our customers because we can roll out features that are requested by the market a lot more quickly with some of these DevOps tools. So, Nathan, it's been great catching up. I do have to run and catch a flight. Can I walk you out?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, great.
What a great day I had at Capital One. I thought I was biking into a bank this morning, but it turns out I was actually biking into a technology company. You heard what Dave said. Capital One is on a DevOps transformation journey. They've become a company that is successfully transforming to deliver software at speed, all with the help of amazing people working together and speaking the same language. And from what I saw and had the chance to hear about, it's going very, very well.
And yes, if you're wondering, Capital One is hiring. And look, moving to a digital attack mode doesn't mean every day is an easy one, but it puts you in the game. And for those that aren't in the game, I think life's going to get tough. I think it's going to be full of agitated executives, agitated investors, agitated everybody. And this is what we want to avoid. So how do you get there? How do you become a digital attacker? And I thought I would start with DJ Patel, who is the former US Chief Data Scientist. And I think he summed it up really well with what I'll call the victor's mantra. So first of all, dream in years, plan in months, evaluate in weeks, ship daily. If you want a single test of the difference between the incumbents and the digital attackers, it's probably that last one, ship daily. And what I think are the two single best questions, not just an IT executive, but any executive could ask their business. The first is, what's required to cut the timeline in half? And the second, what can be done to double the impact? And that first part, that speaks something we're all familiar with, right? The language of IT is about operational efficiency, and I think it's something all of us strive for. That's not controversial. But that second one's tough for a lot of us in IT, especially at big companies. And why it's tough is because that impact is really about customer outcomes. And at big companies, a lot of folks in IT have gotten very, very far away from swimming up and grabbing those customer outcomes. And yet, that is exactly what is at the crux of being a digital attacker. And what's going on is this extraordinary shift, probably the largest ever in IT, from what I'll call infrastructure-centric IT to outcome-centric IT. And in this state we're coming out of infrastructure-centric era, we were over-rotated on availability of systems, almost always at the expense of agility. We were really afraid of change. And because IT was viewed first and foremost as a cost center, the hot leaders of that era were those that were great at cost reduction. Outsourcing sort of became the hammer that was pounding every single IT nail, and this further reduced agility. And this became sort of the era of slow, the era of infrequent big releases. Yes, the era of big rollbacks. And I understand why Adam wanted to bring some joy in that era to the IT operator. It was kind of a painful time. And you can still spot companies that are here. They're easy to see. The quick tell is running lots of old versions of operating systems. Literally because the fear, if I upgrade those, it's going to break something. And that's the state, collectively, we've been digging ourselves out of for the past couple of years. And the digital attackers, they're at the complete other end of the value continuum. They maniacally orient around customer outcomes. They've gotten great at what I think are the three legs of the modern IT stool, which is speed, efficiency, and risk, especially speed. But you can't have speed, it turns out, if you're not good at the other two. And outcome-centric organizations, they're blurring the lines, actually, between IT and the business. And they're putting together cross-functional teams that build and ship high-value software that's solely in service of those customer outcomes. And I want to give a real-world example of what I mean, because I've had a lot of these conversations, and sometimes we've gotten so far away from those outcomes, we don't actually understand what they are. And I'll start with, and this is no judgment, we've been involved in a lot of these projects, a customer outcome is unequivocally not, I can provision our kit faster. And a customer outcome, I think, was greatly exemplified. Last year, we had the CIO of Alaska Airlines, second plug for Alaska there, talk about a great customer outcome. And it was how one of their customers could get to the airport with a checked bag, drop it off, and get to the security line in 60 seconds. And I know as a frequent flyer, I'll say, I stand here delighted. And I'm flying out of Seattle, I see them experimenting. Every time they're doing things a little differently, and they're working to make that faster and faster. That's outcome-oriented IT. So let me talk about what's in between the two ends of the spectrum there. And I think there's this transitional stage that's actually a really important stage that most companies are in somewhere. And at the beginning of this stage, I'll call that Devops Awakenings. And it's kind of an exciting time. And I know some of you are going through this. And we see some teams start to move in a new way, and they start to kind of shed off the cultural norms. They're experimenting with new tools and new platforms. Almost always this is where we see modern automation come in, cloud computing comes in, and kind of a mix of these new cultures, agile, lean, DevOps. And a lot of times, some really extraordinary efficiency gains are made by these teams. And yet, and again, we've been part of a lot of these, sometimes the business is a little bit unmoved. And we're a little disappointed because, hey, we can now do things 5 times or 100 times faster than we used to. Take my provisioning server example. And yet, the business is still agitating because they don't actually believe that's changing the equation on those customer outcomes they're trying to drive. And yet, from this phase, all is not lost. These experiments, these first fast-moving teams, oftentimes this becomes the foundation of really the future IT operating model. So water those, nurture those. And our work, I believe, right now, is to really help you all get from that stage of Devops Awakenings really to the other end of this transition. And I want to refer to this state as continuous automation. And you could also sort of nickname it high velocity, low drama IT. There's some knowing laughs out there. And at this stage, software is tested. It's released in small batches. The rollback thing doesn't happen. All your system software is current. Known security vulnerabilities are patched quickly. And this is really about becoming the master of your infrastructure and reducing the amount of energy that you're spending on that infrastructure, either in the cloud or on-premise. And I think at the core of that ability to move from DevOps Awakenings to continuous everything, code is at the heart of that. And you have to define everything as code. And this buys you a bunch of things. First and foremost, any change, whether it's infrastructure, app, compliance, that change version, it's tested, it doesn't get released unless it works. And that testing, by the way, includes against your compliance standards, which should simply be a series of software tests. And if you do this, sort of gone forever is the need for those worry beads that when you make a change to something, it'll actually break everything. And when this happens, and many of you are doing it, if you think of those companies I talked about earlier, they're doing this. And what flips is those ops teams, instead of being averse to change, which is breaking everything, they start to embrace change. And that idea, code is change, it can sound super science fiction-y and unrealistic if you're not working that way, if you're in the old way. And I think the thing that I really want to reassure everybody, that it's not just for those big web companies. Every single company can operate this way. Many of you are already doing it today. And for those of you that want to be on your way to be digital attackers, it's really, really important to nail this stage. You can't skip over it. Got to be great at continuous automation. And when you get here, sort of anything you do in IT now can be done quickly, efficiently, securely. And that's the foundation of being that high-velocity, competitive software ass kicker that I think we're all trying to be. And I want to really emphasize the importance of compliance to continuous automation. In fact, the flip side of the continuous automation coin is continuous compliance. And this is also a place that we want to bring a little bit of joy to the world. And I don't know about you, but right now the security and compliance teams aren't exactly full of joy when I go talk to them. And I think collectively, we really have the opportunity to change that equation completely. And first and foremost, let's actually improve security. Let's not just do it for the auditors. Let's actually improve security. And secondly, if we think about that velocity thing, I think we can remove compliance as a roadblock to velocity. In fact, I think we can actually make velocity our friend and reinforce what we want to do in compliance with velocity. And lastly, I talked about some of those cultural things that are so important for the new way. Well, one of them is lean. And as many of you know and talk about and probably teach, there's this term called muda in lean, and that's waste. And it's specific waste that is not in service of a customer outcome. And if you think about the work a lot of us have been doing, running around on some of these security breaches, I'm telling you, that is waste. That is time and energy and resources that your company could be applying to something else, be applying to those customer outcomes. And I've already, ChefConf just started, but over the last day or two, I've had a bunch of you share how much time and energy your companies have had to put into things like WannaCry. We don't have to do this. There really is a different way. And most companies, it turns out, we've done some survey work, something over half of all enterprises will declare that they actually don't believe they have an effective strategy around compliance. So the way we're doing it today, it's not working. And while this is certainly a problem, I also want to say this is a huge opportunity. It's an opportunity to help our companies to get real, easy, pragmatic wins. And I also think it's an opportunity for your careers. This is a great place to spend a little time. And when I think about vulnerabilities like Heartbleed or WannaCry or Shell Shock, and I sort of learned vulnerabilities now have their own icons. And the thinking I would encourage us all to have on these is, yes, there's security issues, but really, especially if you look at Heartbleed and WannaCry, these are less security, they're agility issues, right? These were vulnerabilities with known fixes. And so the places that move at velocity, these were pretty low drama, back to that drama thing. In places that weren't high velocity, these things could become very, very painful. And as I said, I think collectively, this community is really in a place to change the game forever around what's going on with automation and compliance. So I want to go back to this idea of outcome-oriented IT and where we're coming from. And if you look at these two triangles, what they really represent is the amount of effort you put into each stage. And in the old world, and this is, to be very clear, the world I came from, you started with, I think the term I remember was you laid down infrastructure, and then you built apps on top of that infrastructure. And I have a little bit of a lie on this, which is I put outcomes there just to be generous, but the phrase I remember my boss talking about was support the business. And you never actually knew, like, well, were we supporting the business? You know, we knew when they were pissed off. But it was kind of a black hole, really. You might talk about alignment, but you never really knew. And the new way is exactly the opposite. You actually start and put the most effort at the top in outcomes. And then you build your apps, which in the modern world are just a whole bunch of services that you push together. And then the idea, and I think where we're going to get, and Chef is very invested in this thought, that your infrastructure should just assemble around those applications, kind of magically. And I don't think we're there yet, but I don't think it's too far away. And we're certainly talking about some things that will take an enormous step in this direction. And I think that we should think of our job right now is to get great at infrastructure, to get great at that continuous automation so you can reduce the drama, reduce the amount of calories you're spending, and start to shift into that new way. And this frees up energy in your company to then go push kind of up the stack, to go work on apps and to work on outcomes. And I want to talk a little bit about technologies. And it is our belief that there is no question the future world will be dominated by cloud, by containers, by modern application architectures centered around microservices. And nobody is more excited about this future world than Chef. We're deeply investing around this world. And I want to commit to you, we are going to be the dominant automation platform around cloud, around containers, around microservices. And you can look at in the things we've been doing. Look at the partnerships that we've been investing in. AWS, Microsoft, Google, all of whom are here, and I want a big hand and thank them for coming and spending time at ChefConf. Those companies are also doing amazing things, and we're just really excited to be partnering with them. And if I go back to these three stages, Devops Awakenings, continuous everything, outcome-centric IT, think about two steps. I think it's almost too aggressive to try to go all the way over. Get great at that first shift, which is from that awakenings phase to continuous everything. And then that gives you a platform to then step to the next step, to get really focused on outcomes, because you've freed up a lot of the things that are taking a ton of your time today. And I want to talk about our technologies a little bit. And first of all, this is our platform. We have 3 open source projects, which we have a ton to thank you, the community, on. Chef is infrastructure automation, Inspect is compliance automation, and Habitat is application automation. And while those lines sound really crisp, you're going to see us start to show you things over the next couple days. We're kind of intermingling those technologies in really interesting ways. So using Habitat, for example, to really do some delightful things in the chef world. Or moving Inspect outside of just the world of securing operating systems. And you'll see us announce we're starting to do some very interesting things with those cloud partnerships around Inspect. And Inspect is something we're going to invest in very, very heavily, continue to invest in heavily, and there's a lot of exciting things over the next coming months in Inspect. And then Habitat. And back to that joy. Habitat is absolutely going to be the fastest path for you to package an app that's ready for containers. And we want to make it very easy to deploy that app across any runtime environment and really ease the burden right now that app teams have around understanding all those underlying dependencies around an application. So again, please spend some time with Habitat. Love to get your feedback on what's going on there. All right, let me wrap up. I'd be remiss not to talk about some things about what's going on in the chef world. It's been amazing, amazing 4 years that I've been at the company. We now have something like 30,000 organizations worldwide using Chef, thanks to you, again, our community. 8 of the largest tech companies, the digital attackers, they use Chef deeply. The 3 largest auto companies I referred to, 6 of the largest retailers, 5 of the biggest financial services firms. And our community is now 70,000 strong worldwide. In this community, thank you, yes. This community, just over the last year, has contributed 5,000 cookbooks back to each other. So thank you for that. And Chef, the Chef client, amazingly, has had 40 million downloads over its life. It boggles me to think about that, 40 million. And all of this and the work that you're doing and the support that you've given us, this has translated into tremendous financial success for us that we're able to then go back and invest in things like Inspect or in Habitat. The company has grown on average 125% over the past 5 years. So thank you for that. It's greatly appreciated. And let me just finish with a couple of asks of each of you. And the first is exactly what we talked about. Get great at continuous automation. There's no reason not to nail this. These projects, by the way, are not multi-year projects. This is something you can get to in a matter of months. We talked about diving into Habitat. The third thing I'll say is please, while you're here, find one of our sponsors, find one of our partners. They have spent time, effort, money, and they're really here to help you be successful. So find them and pass out some hugs. And then lastly, please let us know what you think. Let us know if we're doing a good job or not doing a good job. We'd love to hear about the things that you're finding some joy in around our platform. So hashtag ChefConf, @Chef. I'm @Barry_Crist. I'd love to get some selfies. Thank you very much. Have a great ChefConf, all of you.